Good afternoon, Westwood, and welcome to Westwood Media Center coverage. Evan Cardimino on camera, Morgan Donahue on microphone. You may have heard that more than a few times this spring, but we are here together at the Westwood Media Center podcast studio. Folks, this place is amazing. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend you do. It is here. These resources are here for you, any town residents, Westwood residents. Come check it out. It is pretty cool. It's a resource that, quite frankly, probably not everyone knows about, but we want to make you aware of it. And this, Evan, is our inaugural show. We've kind of brought our show name down, our podcast name down to two names, which we'll figure out at some point. But thanks for joining us, man. And what a season it was. And, to kick things off, it'd be great to just, for anyone that didn't get a chance to meet you throughout the season or get introduced or have a conversation with, tell us a little bit about your story. Like where did you come from? Where did you cut your teeth, in terms of media and what brought you to Westwood Media Center?
Yeah. So for everyone who doesn't know, my name is Evan Cardimino. I'm a production manager here at Westwood Media Center. I've been doing video since probably as far back as I can remember. When I was 11 years old, my mother sent me to a media camp as a kid, and I just, from that day, I knew, I want to do video. Yeah. And I've been doing it ever since, but professionally, I've been doing it for about 5 or 6 years now. Mm. Starting out, I was at Hassan University. I did D3 sports, but I was able to work my way up to UMaine, and at UMaine, I did, college level sports for, we did work with Nesson, we worked with ESPN and all the local outlets up there, doing hockey, doing basketball, softball, baseball. And then from that point, I left. I went down to New Jersey. I worked at a company called EVS Broadcast Equipment. EVS specializes in replay technology. So when you are watching any sport, just about any sport in the United States, and you see an instant replay, it's EVS. But I wasn't getting really behind the camera like I do now. Yep. So, I started looking, and then this opportunity at Westwood came up, and I saw the sports, and I saw some of the stuff they were doing here, the shows, and I just thought this was interesting, and this was right up my alley. I applied. It's a little closer to home of being from Maine. Yeah. I came up, and it's been sports ever since, and I love doing sports here. It's great. Sports have always been a passion, and
That's awesome. And what an addition to the Westwood Media Center team. And, right off the bat, already some really cool games you did this year, some live games, covering a bunch of different sports, different camera angles, but, telling the story. And this season, as opposed to last season, we had a lot of great sports teams. We had 4 teams that were first round home game seeds for Westwood, meaning they were inside the top 16 to get that first round home game. Baseball, softball, girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse. And, you were thrown right into the mix, of this craziness of the spring season. What was your thoughts, impact of kind of, seeing these teams for the first time? What was your experience if you had to, detail that?
What's funny is when I got here, I kind of asked about sports, and I was told Westwood, they have some sports and they're not really a sports school. Yeah. And then I started filming the sports, and I was like, what are you talking about? This is a sports school. Yes. This is a school that is kind of under the radar, I feel like. I think a lot of the TVL league teams are under the radar. There's a lot of good athletes that we've seen. I mean, I look at Bridget Mulkeen. Yes. To have 500 plus strikeouts as a junior is crazy. Yeah. I mean, that's D1 level stats if I've ever heard it. Yes. And then you look at other players in other sports like Kate Sullivan, over 100 goals in hockey. Yep. I mean, this is to see the level of athletics here. It's a great program. It's something that I can tell is young because, we were talking about when you and I covered the TVL championship game at against Norwood for softball. Yeah. First time in 41 years, but it's a young program that's getting developed, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. I mean, just one graduating senior on that team, Dahlia Leiden, who was a terrific player for them and amazing leadership. And that game, very memorable. It was at Morrison Park under the lights. If we ever had a vote, in terms of, sites to play softball games, I would say play as many games as you can there. It was an amazing atmosphere. There's not much room on the sidelines, outside of the foul lines. That's probably maybe kind of one of the bigger challenges there. But there were so many people there. They were up like on those lines on the field, which made it such an amazing experience. And plus, night games. There's nothing better than night games. I mean, Friday night lights for football brings the excitement out. But to see that for some of the other sports, lacrosse, we saw a few night games, but softball at that venue, it was remarkable. And just for the first time in 41 years, to win a TVL, a share of the TVL title with a very talented Hopkinton team. I actually went to the Facebook Old School Westwood group. And a lot of times they're posting about sports. It's a lot of, members are from the 80s, 90s, and it's great because it's a repository of people that played sports during those, eras. And I've asked a few questions. One of the questions was, after Bridget had her 500 strikeout, I asked the question, who's the most dominant athlete, of your recent memory or, your high school memory to come through Westwood? And there was a lot of great feedback, and that might be, we'll save that for another episode. But what I did do was I mentioned the softball for the first time in 41 years, winning a share of the TVL title. And I asked, was there any members in that group that were, knew anyone on that team or were part of that team? And there were. And they were so thrilled, because they had kept tabs of Westwood softball for, numerous years. And, it just never had the momentum and the, the talent that they had this year. And they were a team of destiny. I mean, they started off the season 7-0. 7-0. Big wins over Hopkinton. They went 1-1 versus Hopkinton. We covered the game at Westwood. Hopkinton got off to a good start and ended up winning that game. They went 1-1 versus Medfield, another tough team. And, quite frankly, for Westwood to win, and have a chance at that, share the TVL title, Medfield had to beat Hopkinton. I don't know if you remember that, but it was a game I was watching kind of leading into that game. So shout out to Medfield. Thank you for that big win over Hopkinton to set the stage for Westwood versus Norwood, to have that memorable moment. But that would certainly be, on the top of my memories of this year as a top memory. I don't know about for you, but to see them after they won and them rounding the bases, celebrating, that's a memory I'll remember for a long time.
Yeah, the energy there was electric. Yeah. I mean, once again, you said it. Under the lights at night, no matter how you dice it up, whatever sport it is, it's always just different. Yeah. And then, you and I are there probably, half hour before the game. And I remember you come up to me and you're like, Medfield won. Yeah, and like you could see that kind of starting to circulate through the crowd and the energy changes. Yeah. And it's, one more thing about softball real quick before I get to my favorite memory. Yeah. This is a young team. It is. You look at, we were talking about it. Their outfielders are all underclassmen. Yes. And it's one of those things that, they're young. Yeah. And there were probably some mistakes that were made this season that, that comes with experience. Yep. So this is a team that just got their first TVL championship in 41 years. Mm-hmm. They could be making a run soon because they're all young. They're all getting that experience. And it's great when you have that being built. Yeah. Favorite memories. One I have that sticks out to me was Dante Martucci's behind the back goal against Dover Sherborne. Yes. We were calling that game and I'm following him. Yes. And he looks like he's going to go set it up behind the back of the net. Yes. And that's what I thought too, following it. And then out of nowhere, he just slings it behind the back. Yep. And all I hear is, oh my God, shame on me. Yeah. And I thought that was your best call of the season. But that was my favorite moment. For boys lacrosse, I mean, the games we covered, some of them, in Martucci and Pizzuto specifically, that speed they have to swap fields, that is, that's crucial.
That's game changing. So I had the unique opportunity to coach Ryan Pizzuto. I was a hockey coach for a couple of years. I coached the defense. So I specifically, every day I was with him. And what a talent he is. He is so fast. He's so smart. He's a tough kid. You got to be tough playing hockey, playing lacrosse. You're getting whacked at all times. But like when, Pollock would come in, and let's take a step back. Jaden Pollock coming in as a sophomore, first varsity, action, coming in replacing, they had Caleb Woodworth and David Solomon, who were great goalies for Westwood. So there was a big question. He came in, played fantastic. Yeah. And, he got better and better throughout the season. But when he would make big saves, he immediately looked for Pizzuto. And, when you can break that ball out by finding, your guy, and he's just, making football moves to get it across the 50 and then set up your offense, what an amazing resource to have. And, he was part of the captains. They had 4 captains for the lacrosse team. Brendan Varnerin, he was a 2-year captain last year. Max O'Brien scored some big goals in the playoffs, hockey player as well. And then Ryan Gaffney. What a sacrifice he made this year. Last year, he had to have had 20, 25 goals. He was a goal scorer for the Wolverines. Great midfielder. This year, the coach had asked him to he wanted to get him a look at long stick midi, which is more of a defensive midfielder, helping out especially on defense, getting that ball on the ground. So he sacrificed some goals, but he helped make the defense even more stronger or more strong than they were last year. And then when you bring him into the mix and you have Pollock in the net, you have guys like Ryan Hughes. Ryan Hughes is an honorable mention all-star in the TVL. You also had Kyle Harvey, honorable mention, big kid.
Yeah.
He looks like a blue chip Division I lacrosse player. Like, I would not be surprised if he gets some good offers. He moves well. He gets the ball on the ground. He's physical, and he's a great teammate. Like, he's always rooting his teammates on the defensive zone. Ryan Williams too.
Yeah.
So Liam Williams gets a lot of credit, and rightfully so. He's a terrific goal scorer and midfielder. Ryan Williams, so impressive on defense. He's not a big kid, but he plays big. His game is big. He knocks the ball down. He's not afraid to be physical. And they do such a good job when they get those turnovers to turn those into transitions, then turn into goals. So we saw so many of those transitionary type goals. But when I think of like some of the memorable games that we did, Dover Sherborne's definitely up there.
Yeah.
Very top, one of the top teams in the TVL. I got to see some of the games outside of the games we did too. So in Medfield, Westwood they lost to Medfield originally at home pretty handedly. It was, a cold game, Medfield came out ready to go and they won pretty good. Westwood did, come back and make it a competitive game towards the end. But the game in Medfield, they lost 11-10. Medfield is a Division III state champion. Medfield would probably be a top 5 team in Division I.
Yeah.
They're that talented. The girls too. Girls won the Division III state championship for lacrosse too. But shout out to the All-Stars. So Brendan Varnerin, All-Star. Ryan Gaffney, All-Star. Jack Roycroft, Troy Fredrickson. And you mentioned the excitement for girls softball of all those, young players coming back. There's a lot of young players coming back for lacrosse. You got Jack Roycroft, Troy Fredrickson, as attack. Will Stuhler was getting into the mix. We called his first goal. Those are some cool memories that I remember is these first goal calls.
Yeah. The first goal calls are always fun. You can see just when you're watching the players on the field, the energy, and that just translates more to the game because you're getting your freshmen in, you're getting your young guys in, and you're getting them goals, and they're starting to build that confidence, but it also builds confidence in your team. Now the team's looking at it and saying, we have young guys that we can depend on if something happens, and they have game experience, and that's big for Westwood in general. One thing I've noticed that Westwood High School does with their athletics that all the coaches do that's really good is they find the right times to get their young players in and get them that varsity experience instead of waiting and throwing them in. I see up in Maine when I was in high school, a lot of high schools did that and it didn't work. They have short success, but if you want to set up for long success, that's what Westwood's doing right now in boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, all the sports. I mean, even girls lacrosse too. Huge. That's a young team as well. They are losing a few key pieces in Noble. Noble, I can't count the amount of times you called turnovers from Noble, but we're watching in the playoffs, they're getting their young freshmen and sophomores in the playoffs. That's crucial experience.
Bridget Hughes, 2 goals in the playoffs for girls lacrosse. Jillian Walsh scored her first varsity goal in the playoffs. Those are cool. And what I like about these first goals are you might look 4 years from now and they might be the most decorated player at Westwood, lacrosse, Westwood boys lacrosse, Westwood girls lacrosse. And we have their first goal, captured. They might go on to play pro, who knows, or whatever it is. But those first goals, you only have one, first goal. And, to see that and to be a part of it. But what's even cooler is how much the teammates are pumped up about it. What you'll notice is they all rush to the player to celebrate, but one of like the seniors goes to the net to grab that ball. And what they're doing is they want to bring that ball and save it so they can have that memory, for the first goals. And then you just still, on the boys lacrosse side, a couple other things just wanted to mention was kudos to, and you mentioned playing the younger squad, kids. There's risk doing that, but these coaches are doing a terrific job by getting them ready, because a freshman that's getting time now, going and getting reps, their sophomore year is really like their junior year. They have confidence, It's not going to take 10 games going in, and their team is better for that, and it's also depth. When you can get a rotation going, everyone's, refreshed, everyone's ready to go. And Todd Zaherk did a great job. And the other thing I think you would agree with me on, Todd, the best timeout caller in the state.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, he just will always find the right time, and it really just, if they're losing momentum in a game, we saw this time and time again. If they're losing momentum and he just has that timing down with the timeouts, and then it kills that momentum for the team. It puts them more on a neutral playing ground, and then it lets them regroup, and then they get back on the field. They get a crucial turnover, or they stop a goal. They let Pollock get a goal, which let's talk about Pollock for a second. His goal for a sophomore, his composure, that's impressive.
Very impressive.
I mean, so Todd Zaherk does a great job with those timeouts. I mean, we saw it, I think, in just about every game we did. So,
he does it too, where Westwood gets a big turnover, and they might be losing the ball. Like the ball is like about to, they got 3 guys on them, and the ball seems like it's going to come out of the stick, and they're going to turn it over, and the other team's going to get. He gets it right in like where you actually see the formation, you see the whistle, and the ball come loose, and you're like, that would have been a turnover, but Todd called the timeout. Not only are we keeping the ball, but refresh, you can get new people out there, and you got a plan in place. But notable games, big win over Canton. Canton's always a tough, Hockomock opponent. Norwell in the Chowder Cup, big win over Norwell. Dover Sherborne, the 8-7 win. As mentioned, Pollock with a big save at the end. With the 1-goal lead. That was the close right there. Derryfield. So they played Derryfield, top team in New Hampshire, beat them 7-5. I haven't looked to see who was the state champion for New Hampshire. I think they were the last 4 state champion boys lacrosse for New Hampshire, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were this year. But that's a big win by Westwood, and fun season to cover with them. They're super talented, as mentioned. They got a lot of great players coming back. I think we talked about some of the underclassmen on defense. CJ Hancock was getting in the mix there too. The midfielders. You got plenty of young midfielders coming in. You had freshmen of Walsh was getting in there, Sesselman, who were getting in there as freshmen. And then you look at the attack, prolific goal scorers in Roycroft, Fredrickson, these guys were not only just scoring, they were firing the ball. Like Fredrickson, probably one of the harder shots we've seen in the TVL, and he can shoot righty too. Liam Williams, some of the big goals from him. He's got this on some of his biggest goals. It's like a jump shot. He gets up in the air where he's got space to shoot, and he actually gets some power from it. And he scored that big goal. I believe it was versus Grafton. Yep. And Westwood was up like 4 or 5, and Grafton got it to within 1, and they needed to get another one to kind of separate themselves. A little insurance goal. He got it on a nice pass from Varnerin. But very, very fun season to cover the boys lacrosse. Looking forward to next year. Lot coming back, and ultimately, those were some of the best memories, as you mentioned. The behind the back. Yeah. Brennan Barnard had a behind the back goal, the freshman goals, and then the big playoff goals. Roycroft 3 goals in the playoffs. In the Grafton game. So picking up with baseball, terrific season. Number 9 seed for MIA Division II. Big wins over Norwood. They beat Norwood twice. Yeah. Norwood's a team that any sport, regardless, football, hockey, they're, for the most part, they have our number. They were originally a Division I team years back. They joined the TVL. 1-1 versus Hopkinton. Hopkinton made it to, I think, the round of 8. 2-0 versus always a tough Medfield team. But what was your, in terms of the baseball games we did, we had some good games. We had Medfield game. We did a Walpole game, which is a very competitive game.
Yeah.
What was some of the things you saw in baseball, some of the players that stuck out in your opinion?
Yeah, that Walpole game, I want to start there.
Yeah.
Because that was the game where Luke Chandler got that 3-run bomb.
Yeah.
Luke Chandler, for me, I think going into his senior season is going to be that star for them. I mean, we saw it on the mound. He was number 2 behind Elliot Harris on the rotation.
Yes.
And Elliot Harris, TVL MVP.
Correct.
Let's give him a shout out because that's no small feat. Luke Chandler, I watched him on the mound, and he slings it, and then he can go and hit yard.
Yes.
And that's, you don't find that often in pitchers. But he stood out to me this season as a player that's coming into his own. And I think going into next season, he's going to be one of the guys to watch. But that game against Walpole, I mean, we lost that game 5-3, but that was a close game through and out. And I remember you and I were talking in between innings each, inning, and we were saying, this is going to be a defensive matchup.
Yeah.
And it is. Westwood has no shortage of hitting, and they're great hitting, and Walpole has great hitting too. It's just a matter that day of who made the least errors, who had the best defensive showing. And I believe we faced Walpole again in the playoffs.
We did. Yeah. So they played Walpole in the round of 8. So if Westwood were to beat Walpole, they would have been in the Final Four. Close game. They lost 5-4. They played their hearts out. Got to give credit to Westwood. They played amazing. And Walpole's a great team. You got to give them credit too. They made it. They beat Westwood. They won the next game. They made it to the state championship. I believe they lost to Plymouth. But what a playoffs for Westwood.
Yeah.
And some of so when we look at the All-Stars, Elliot Harris, TVL MVP.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen often. You're in a very talented baseball league. When I looked at, I think it was the round of 8. There was 3 TVL teams in the round of 8. You had Westwood, Norwood, and Hopkinton.
Yeah.
And he's the TVL MVP of this league with obviously very, very talented teams and talented players. Jake Quinn was an all-star.
Yeah.
Jake Quinn gets his business done quietly. I coached him in hockey. He is one of my favorite players. He is a leader by example. A quiet kid, but he's got a big game. He was a TVL all-star for hockey. But what I noticed from baseball, very timely hitter. They have him as the 9 hitter, which we've mentioned on the call, is when you have a player as talented as him as a 9 hitter that gets on base and hits for singles, you have 2 number 1 hitters. You have 2 1 hitters. So he's on base, and now you got the 1 hitter, and then you got the power of the lineup right there, to get runs across the board.
Yeah.
So shout out Jake. Great season. TVL All-Star, and we saw a number of different line drives to left field. He was well positioned.
Yeah.
Just moved a foot, made the catch.
Yeah.
Luke Chandler, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely, Vegas odds for a team captain. He's definitely very high up there. Him and Jonathan Bertone, I would call, and Jonathan Bertone, the other TVL All-Star. Him and Jonathan Bertone, I would say, baseball's in their DNA.
Yeah.
They play fall ball, they play Legion, they play club. A lot of the players on this team, they're other athletes, they play other sports.
Right.
Their focus and their love, true love is baseball, and you can see it, just the approach that they have and how much fun they have and how competitive they are. We saw plenty of times where Luke was on the mound and there was good pitches that weren't called for strike, but he just got back up there and fired away and would stay competitive.
Yeah.
But heck of a year from him, and I think I'm very excited to see what he does next year. Each year he's adding more miles an hour to his fastball. I have the luxury of being in the same neighborhood as Luke, so I see his father Pete all the time, and Pete's keeping me updated on off season and all the hard work he's putting in. But the funny thing you mentioned about that Walpole game with the home run is we were talking about, I've never seen a home run. I've done a couple years, 2 years watching games. I had come back to watch a few games throughout the years. I've never seen a home run, particularly a righty, because it's a short, it's not short. It's a longer down the left field line than it is the right field line. He hit an absolute monster of a home run. It went over the fence, and the boys were fired up. I think they were down 1-0. That put them up 3-1.
Yep, that did. No, and you mentioned it there too. When you go to Russ Downs Field and you look at left field versus right field, the distance, even just looking at it, you can tell it's hard to hit. And for him to hit it, I think off the board
Yes, yeah.
is crazy.
That's what someone said, off the board. I
Yeah.
was like, that's. And then shout out to the playoffs. So that, as we mentioned, they had playoff wins over Marblehead 9-3. And shout out to Elliot. Elliot
Yep.
was there covering that game. 9-3 or 6-3 win over Algonquin on the road. And then they lost to Walpole 5-4. But guys who stuck out, the usual suspects, Bertone, Quinn, Harris, and Luke Chandler competing. But guys like Donahue. Donahue, I think, had 5 hits in 2 games for the Wolverines.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that played first base. They had him at catcher. In the playoffs, he was playing third base.
Yeah.
So, great leadership of, wherever you need me, coach, I'm there, I'm ready. And then to provide that, with the bat. Then Julian Colon.
Yep.
Monster game versus Walpole.
Yeah.
So in the 5-4, when he had I think a 2-run home run, he had a double and a single. He had 3 hits.
Oh, wow.
Which very, very good game for him. And he was a kid that came on hot, towards the second half of the season. Great hitter, great fielder, and a great season. But very impressed. Brian Whalen, head coach Brian Whalen, he's been at Westwood for quite some time. I had him as a coach back in, my time in baseball. Graduated in 2005 at Westwood. I had some great conversations with him throughout the offseason. He was very excited about this team. He loves Westwood. He loves coaching. He loves, obviously, very competitive guy, loves to win, but he's developing these student athletes into young men. He's preparing them for life. And, when you look at baseball, you look at any sport, it really is a microcosm of life. There's going to be bad throws. There's going to be tough losses. There's going to be, rainouts, all that stuff. But how do you bounce back from it? How do you prepare for it? They set goals in the beginning of the year, and what are you doing each day to get closer to achieving those goals? So they got a tremendous coach in him, and really happy for him and the season he had. And I think next year there's certainly there's a lot of seniors they're losing. However, when I look back at last year's season, they lost a lot of seniors last year. They lost 3 kids that are playing in the college level last year, and they came back and bounced back like this. But from a memory standpoint, that home run does stick out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I guess some of the strikeouts too. But when I do look at the depth, though, for next year, you do lose Hunt. You lose Harris and Dayton.
Yep.
But we saw in the playoffs, Hunt's little brother pitch, freshman, very impressive.
Yeah.
And if you got a guy like Chandler leading him, you got Martin who comes in to pitch. And you're going to have, some kids coming up that were, they might have been JV or even young kids coming up. But, it's a great start having a leader like Pete Chandler there to take in some of those younger kids. But yeah, congrats to baseball. Really, really good season. 9 seed in Division II, 16-6 overall. That was awesome, and some big wins over some of the toughest teams in the TVL. And then girls lacrosse. Girls lacrosse was an interesting season. They lost a lot of firepower last year. They lost 5 girls that are now were at the Division I level for college. Yeah. So, there was, but they still had a lot of talent to come back with. And I think there was a lot of players that were talented that, as the season went on, the confidence, was rolling.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of girls lacrosse games.
We did. We I think of all the sports we covered girls lacrosse the most by about, I think, 1 or 2 games. And they also had 2 home games.
Yes.
Because they had some pretty big wins. They beat Long Meadow.
Yes. Yep.
They had a close loss against Duxbury. Yeah. But they also had some road games that we didn't cover that were, some impressive wins.
Yep. They had a tough they did have a tough overtime loss in Lincoln Sudbury, 11-10. Lincoln Sudbury was the Division I state champion last year. So even some of those tough losses were, I think, confidence boosts. When you mentioned that Duxbury game, Duxbury is a tough opponent, but I think Westwood knew that they let Duxbury back in that game.
Yeah.
And I think that game was the turning point in the season where I know head coach Margot Spatola, she was not happy about that game. And I think that there was a lot of learning opportunities for the team after that game of how to close a game out,
Mm.
how to not take your foot off the pedal. I mean, we saw that in the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
17-6 win in the round of 32, 20-4 win in the round of 16.
And these are playoff games.
These are playoff games.
That's crazy to think that we're
Yes.
having that. And I was going to say, I think Duxbury is one of the first games we covered.
Yes.
But as we kept going, the later on the season got, they just learned to keep their foot on the pedal
Yes.
and just keep going. And that's crucial.
I'm fired up about this team, because I'm just so excited about what they have for next year.
Yeah.
Caroline Nozzolillo, I think, is one of the best goal scorers in the state, if not the best.
I would agree. I mean, with the amount of I was trying to remember how many games we covered where she got, I think, a double hat trick.
Yes.
And it's hard, especially towards the end. I mean, 6 goals in the game, to do that time and time again is unheard of.
Yes.
I would fathom to say she is the best goal scorer in the state.
Yeah.
And she's going to be a senior.
Yeah.
And you also have the duo of the DeMeo
DeMeo
sisters.
Emily and Charlotte. Yeah.
They're strong goal scorers too. We saw towards the end, especially Cece Thurmond.
Yes.
She started coming into her own.
Yes.
And then once again, getting the young players in to
Yes.
score. Bridget Hughes, you
Yes.
mentioned. I'm sure there were others that I'm blanking on.
Kate
right
Sullivan, she was getting in the mix. Katie Krumzik, senior, she was getting in the mix in the Walpole game. She scored 2 goals in the first half. And Cecilia Thurman, I want to give her a shout out. She was a player that she was rotating last year, and you'd see the name and whatnot. She took some face-offs here and there. What a breakout season for her. So coming into the season, she was playing attack, and most of the times when you see someone who's playing attack set up behind the net, they're dishing, they're passing, and she was unbelievable. It was, I kept saying setting up in Gretzky's office. And she was, setting up so many assists to Nozzolillo and to cutters. You have DeMeo coming across, Charlotte or Emily. And then she went on a tear scoring goals. She had a game of scoring 5 goals. She, I think, scored in the Westboro game. I think she scored the first 4.
Yeah. No.
And folks, keep an eye on her. She's an exceptional talent too. When we were watching the Walpole game, she scored, 2 or 3 quick goals. What a player what she did this year was absolutely remarkable. And then, when you mentioned the DeMeos, I think what gets overlooked with them is they're tremendous on offense, and they work so well together, and they work so well with their teammates. But they are so good on defense. It gets overlooked. The amount of turnovers, and it's not just knocking the ball on the ground, picking up a ground ball and going the other way. They're catching passes clean on an interception.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, when Westwood was down a goal to Long Meadow with under a minute, typically 99.9% of the time, that's game over, folks. Emily DeMeo intercepted a pass from the goalie. Or excuse me, let me take it a step back. Kate Sullivan was able to knock the ball down. Westwood goes the other way. Lil Hancock scores the goal to tie it to go to overtime. Double overtime. Emily DeMeo intercepted pass from a goalie, sends it to Nozzolillo. Nozzolillo puts it in the back of the net for the goal. And that's what they've been doing for the last several years. Is they are so good on defense. They play the full field. And if you put a Fitbit on them, they're probably running 7 to 10 miles a game.
Yeah.
And they're coming back, and they're committed to play at Quinnipiac. Caroline Nozzolillo committed to play at Brown. Kate Sullivan, very impressive. Her and Nozzolillo kept finding each other. Nozzolillo would score from a pass from Kate, and then Kate would score from a pass from Nozzolillo.
Yeah.
And then the defense, when you have Noble, her best season I've seen, on defense, knocking that ball on the ground, being able to turn into transitions that turn into goals. And Catherine Donahue.
Yeah.
She's coming in with big shoes to fill, You had Riley Harrington, who was the goalie the year before at Dartmouth. And then the year before that, Anya Holland, was playing at Fairfield. And this is, her real first, varsity action, versus some of the top teams. And she had some huge saves. She kept them in big games. And, to be able to beat a Long Meadow 16-5, she must have had 8 to 9 huge saves where that was the difference. It wasn't the goal scoring. It was the defense that made that. But I'm excited. I'm so excited about this team. It was unfortunate that the season was cut short early. I think that we'll definitely transition to next year, which is highly motivated. Because what we saw in that Westboro game, 20-4, they were playing with a chip on their shoulder.
Right.
They were the 7 seed. When's the last time Westwood was a 7 seed?
Right.
But in terms of memories, what are some of the memories you had from the the girls' lac season? Milestones, goals, things like that.
I mean, just the hat tricks.
Yes.
I mean, whether it was Nozzolillo or
Yes.
one of the DeMayos
Yeah.
or Kate Sullivan, whoever, the amount of hat tricks they had, and I know lacrosse is a higher scoring sport, but still, it's crazy. And the other thing that sticks out to me, one of the things that I when I look back on that team that I think of, is that they're so good at play. Their team chemistry is so good that you could flip a coin and guess who was having the hat trick that day, because one day it could be Nozzolillo, the next day it could be CC Thurman. They have that chemistry of, we can just work together, and whoever's day it is their day. As for specific games, I really look at that Westboro game.
Yeah.
I mean, on top of the goal saving, the amount of saves they had just to keep them in that game in general, for that to be, okay, we're not in the round of 32, you might get a team that you can drop 10 plus points on. But you go to, you're now in the round of 16, this team has a win, you have a win. To drop 16 points and to only let up 4, that's an amazing performance. That this team, I really do think, with their youth and their chemistry, this is a team that next year is going to be making a very deep run in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Hopefully past the round of 8, which is where they got to, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was a great memory. The amount of saves, as we mentioned, Catherine Donahue, tremendous year. And what a leader she is too. She was making some of the biggest saves in the biggest, parts of the games. And she was making these saves early on. So she was making these saves at the start of the game, which allows Westwood to get off to a 5-0, 6-0 lead, What I really remember from that game, and I was mentioning it, they played with a chip on their shoulder. They were angry, and I loved it. You need that sometimes in sports, where the Patriots would use that all the time. If the experts, are saying that Tom Brady's he fell off a cliff, his career wise, and he's not the same Tom Brady, and then he goes out and wins 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
With Westwood as a 7 seed, I think that they had beaten 2 teams that were ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
Was a 7 seed the right seed? No, but you have the opportunity though. Okay, well, let's play like we're the 1 seed, and they looked like it.
Yeah.
When you put that many goals up versus a great Westboro team that played numerous Division I teams, Westboro team that played, in a tough league. I think the Westboro team only had about 4 losses in the season too.
Yeah.
So this isn't some out of league lower division team they played. They played a top team in Division II and rolled.
Right.
Rolled. So. I'm excited for what they bring next year, and as you mentioned, a lot of depth had come in and been rotating through the game. So there's a lot of girls that are going to be jumping into those spots that have opened up, with the graduating seniors for next year. And you know what? Kudos to Margot Spatola. She has probably one of the toughest non-league schedules in the state. She's playing the NDAs. Playing the Lincoln Sudburys, playing top Division I and Division IIs. I mean, one might make the argument that Division II is a tougher division to play in. The Central Catholic, which was the Division I state championship, congrats to Central Catholic, they lost to NDA. Yeah. Pretty handedly.
And what's great about playing those opponents too is that you're keeping the axe sharp as you play them. It's good to play teams that are sometimes better than you, because you need to see that when you get to tournament time, what you're going up against.
Yeah.
It's really hard to beat a team twice.
Yeah.
And Westwood does that well, but seeing them early on and maybe losing, you learn from it and you keep yourself like, okay, this is what they do well. What do I need to do to get better? So, I mean, it's great that they get to play so many non-league games against the cream of the crop.
Yep. Absolutely. But this is a great wrap up, Evan. It was a super fun spring season, and had a lot of fun with you, man. And I think for this being a pilot episode, certainly want to have some interactive episodes in the future. With athletes, coaches, and see where it goes. Certainly, I'm excited about fall.
I am too.
The Westwood High football team's already calculating how many days until first day of training camp.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable that we're close. But this is a great wrap up. I think what would be a cool one is wrap up some of these seasons with some of the athletes. If we can do that would be great. But also we'll figure out the name too. So we were thinking the Wolverine wrap and the Westwood Sports wrap.
So we had the two options that will open to a vote on our socials. You can find it at Westwood Media Center or at WW Calls. Yeah. We are thinking of either the Westwood Sports Report or the Wolverine Report. We can't decide. We like both. We like the names both. Yeah. We want to let you guys pick, and then hopefully by next episode you'll have your choice, and we'll go with that. But yeah, no, looking forward to the fall season. I mean, you mentioned football. Football is always fun, but we got other great sports too. We got boys soccer, girls soccer, field hockey, and volleyball. And it'll be all here on Westwood Media Center.
And lastly, too, you mentioned volleyball, and definitely want to give a shout out to the boys volleyball team. So this year was kind of like an inaugural. It wasn't varsity accredited yet. Right. Is that correct?
That's correct. This was their first year. Right now, they are a club sport, technically. We were able to actually get out to a game. Elliot, shout out Elliot. Thank you for all the games you cover, and all the high school students who cover. We have a few that have come in and helped. So I just want to give a quick shout out to them. But, we got to see a game, and the energy there is great. And I hope it continues. It seems like a great program that they've started. So, I mean... yeah, getting to even start a new sport. I mean, it's growing in the TVL. I know Hopkinton and Norwood have league teams. I know there's a few others that I'm blanking on, but...
Well, the funny thing about TVL and men's volleyball, boys volleyball, is the Division I volleyball state champion from like the early 2000s. It wasn't Years of Arians. It wasn't, St. John's Prep, CM, or Needham, or some of these large Division I teams. It was Millis. Millis, who's got an enrollment of probably at the high school, total enrollment of maybe 400 people at that time. So it's amazing history for boys volleyball. And that would be really cool to have that, as part of a, varsity program. And the last thing I want to mention, too, in addition to a vote on the name is, folks, we'd love to hear from you on favorite memories from this year. So they can be plays. They can be, just memories in general from some of the games. So I figure we'll put out a vote where you guys can vote on the top 10. And we'll put, maybe we could put some videos together that show the 10 and the countdowns of that. But we got plenty of them. I got a bunch of different ideas that we had written down, but we'll put a bunch on like a Survey Monkey, something like that. Send that out to the public, but would love to get your feedback on that and to see what are the top 10 sports memories from the 2024 spring season. So that'll be a lot of fun. But Evan, inaugural episode. This is a lot of fun. This is history, groundbreaking. Looking forward to more.
I am too. It's weird being in the front of the camera. I'm so used to being behind the camera. But yeah, no, this is great. I'm excited for this. I want to hear all the stories Westwood alumni, past and current students have to tell, and just talk Westwood sports, because what we have here is a great program, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, folks, thank you for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you on the next one.